Jesse Jackson. Tonight we're talking about Donald Trump's 100 days later. A very divisive and ugly campaign season, a very corrupted political season where the winner lost and the loser won, and now a radical reversal of 50 years of civil rights gains in education, health care, the right to vote. It is a lot of chaos, a lot of suspicions from Montgomery to Moscow. What's going on? Very special guest tonight, Don Terry, our communication director at Rainbow Push and Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. Trevor Gervais of Common Cause. Dr. Latessa Wallace, I say doctor, state rep. Thank you very much, doctor. And attorney Reverend Jeanette Wilson of Rainbow Push Coalition. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Exciting news. The free Rainbow Push mobile app is ready for download. Get all the news and schedules for the upcoming convention and more. Go to the Rainbow Push homepage at www.rainbowpush.org to download app today. Noticias importantes. La aplicación móvil y gratis de Rainbow Push está lista para utilizar. Obtengan todas las noticias y horarios para la próxima convención y mucho más. Visiten la página de inicio de Rainbow Push en www.rainbowpush.org para descargar la aplicación hoy. Register today for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's 46th Annual International Convention, Wednesday, July 12th through July 15th, 2017, at the Hilton and Towers in Chicago, Illinois. The theme this year is Heal and Rebuild. For further information, go to www.rainbowpush.org or call 773-373-3366. July 12th through July 15th, 2017, Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome back. Don, in these 100 days, a very tumultuous season. Lots of uncertainty. The president's on the FBI investigation, lots of chaos. What's on your mind about these first 100 days?
Kind of the atmosphere that, the poisonous atmosphere that President Trump and his administration have created, mass deportations, hate crimes are up, fear is going through the roof in Latino people, all sorts of people. But there is some good news.
Because
mass deportations, the knock on the door, taking your kid to work, and maybe someone taking your kid to school, the immigration authorities taking you off the street right in front of your child.
Sounds kind of German-esque.
It does. But there is also good news in this 100 days that Trump has brought the country together. The resistance to Trump is also growing every day. From the Women's March on the day after his inauguration to the thousands and thousands of people of all walks of life who came out to protest the Muslim ban, and they helped turn that around and stop it.
The refugee ban.
The refugee ban, right, exactly. So there's some good news, and that's it.
Trevor, you have been a part of all these major marches since January 21st. What I found to be the most interesting thing, the number of Trump supporters were in fact in the marches. Explain that.
That's right. You know, it's not just Democrats, it's not just independents. We've seen Republicans coming out like never before at the Women's March, you know, coming out to the airports when the Muslim ban was put in, coming out to the climate marches. And the reality is that the only thing that President Trump has accomplished in his first 100 days is bringing together the resistance. The reality is that so many people are so frustrated because they're losing their health care, they're losing benefits and programs that they really count on. President Trump, or candidate Trump at the time, promised that he was going to keep them, he was going to expand them, everyone was going to get health care, and they're saying that he was lying the whole time.
Dr. Latessa Wallace, state rep from Illinois. As a state rep, what do you see?
Well, I see that this resistance is actually growing in the State House, that we're actually working on pieces of legislation to help protect the citizens of Illinois against the things that are happening at the federal level. So whether it's the safe zone legislation to make sure that individuals aren't carted out from hospitals or schools or religious institutions for being an immigrant, or it's civil litigation for hate crimes. We're trying to address several of the things that we see happening at the national level.
If they're successful in getting the Senate to go along with cutting Medicaid, what will it mean to the Illinois budget already stressed with lack of a budget?
It will devastate our budget. Our Medicaid funding is already teetering. We cut about 30 to 40% over the last several years, and there was a huge Medicaid expansion which happened with ACA. So we'll lose millions of individuals in Illinois. Millions will lose coverage.
Over 100,000 jobs.
Yes, and then there will be tens of thousands of jobs lost.
Attorney Wilson, the first 100 days.
I think the most significant thing in the first 100 days have been his cabinet appointments. When you look at Jefferson, Beauregard, Sessions, everything that we fought for from 1950 to now, or really after Plessy versus Ferguson, you have a son of the South, a states' writer, now saying that the Voting Rights Act does not need to be enforced and protected. Intrusive. And then he also is against police accountability, so he's not going to support the consent decrees that the Obama administration was finally able to move forward. And then the second most significant appointment, I think, was Betsy DeVos, who believes in school choice and not in affordable education, high-quality public education for every child. I mean, this is just as right-wing as you could go. And then the third thing is appointing Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court. So you shift in the court to the right.
Trevor, the first act of Neil Gorsuch was to vote to electrocute 4 people back to back to back in Arkansas. And it was his first act. Mm-hmm. It was a kind of mass murder by the state.
And here's the real problem. It's not just how conservative Neil Gorsuch is. That's a reason a lot of people don't like him. But look at the way he got to the bench. Every single time that there's ever been an opening, the sitting president makes a nomination and the Senate approves that nomination unless there's an extreme reason why not to. Republicans in the Senate would not hear from President Obama's nominee, would not even talk to him in a private meeting, not even once. And so they waited until the election was over. They changed the Senate rules to force through someone that the American people don't agree with.
Like they stole a seat.
That's right. It's a stolen seat.
And it is a stolen seat, but this is something I want to talk about later. The Democrats have to learn how to fight. They can't just take this stuff and then, oh, woe is me, they're not going to talk to our nominee. If Trump, one thing about Trump, he would have been screaming, and we're just so laid back and cool about it. Oh, you're being rude to us. No, we got to start fighting these people.
The crown jewel of Dr. King's work was to protect the right to vote.
Absolutely.
Sessions called that intrusion on states' rights. He even thought the 54th Supreme Court decision 9-0 was activist judges. So he was against ending apartheid, against protecting the right to vote. Now he's the head of the entire Department of Justice with 93 appointments to be made.
Right. I think you've called it that now he's the head of the Injustice Department, which I think is an apt description. Especially now we're having all these, again, this flurry of police shootings. A 15-year-old was killed recently in Dallas, Texas. A 15-year-old honor kid shouldn't be killed driving away from a party. The Justice Department refused to press charges with the killing in Louisiana. So this is very, very concerning.
We have the Sterling case, Latessa, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Right.
A man was down, and you could see it on camera, shot while down and killed, and he pulled the feds out. So it's the state's right to address it.
Yes.
Does that happen in meetings, say, for example, at Life in Rockford, your district?
Definitely. In 2009, we had an individual, a young man named Mark Anthony Barmore, shot and killed in a church. He was leaving the scene, walking down the street, ran into the church. The officers followed him and killed him in front of the daycare. Our city could have been Ferguson, but it did not rise to that level. We in Illinois are trying to put measures in place for greater police accountability, additional training, moving toward certification or licensure for officers. I just passed a bill requiring independent investigation for officer-involved sexual assault.
What does that mean?
It's headed to the Senate. It's saying if an officer is accused of sexually assaulting someone, that his own unit, his own agency can't investigate him. We're asking for another agency to come in and take over that
So
investigation.
the blue coat of silence would be wiped out.
That is what we're attempting to do here.
Yeah, but see, what you have with the highest ranking attorney, the Attorney General is now saying, we don't want to have an oversight over police because that will violate their ability to function and provide safety. So you have the highest ranking lawyer in America now saying everything is a states' rights agenda. Every state can pass whatever laws they want. And I, as the chief law enforcement interpreter of the law, I don't have to support voting rights.
You know, between 1880 and 1945, 1,000 blacks were lynched without one indictment.
Not one.
And we think of Emmett Till being lynched.
Right.
And they knew who the killer was and would not tell
Will not
it.
prosecute.
And one witness, one of the jury person said she could not imagine allowing a white man to be killed for a nigger. And we had no person on the jury, Latessa. And when Emmett Till was killed for another 40 years, I mean, when Medgar Evers was killed, another 40 years, not until we got the right to it that we began to modify the behavior of juries. And now we find ourselves now in a strange throwback in time to states' rights over federal protection.
Federal protection. And so now you have this Attorney General saying that the federal government does not have to protect the most vulnerable. It doesn't have to protect innocent citizens on the street if they happen to be African American, young people. He's not providing those kind of safeguards. He's stepping back and saying, whatever you want to do in the state, go ahead and do it. Because if you look at his state, Alabama, where a large percentage of those lynchings occurred, Alabama, where he was opposed to the voting rights, they picketed him. And you got Beauregard Sessions. It's a throwback to Reconstruction.
Jefferson Davis Sessions, who represents slavery, secession, segregation, and sedition.
That's right.
He's named after him.
That's right. And proud of it.
But what is interesting, though, Jeanette, is that it's a kind of counter-revolution in the country. That's why I think some of the whites are marching. We'll talk about that a little later. But you really have a case where the Department of Justice Attorney General is against the Voting Rights Act, as we've known it. You got DeVos in education, who has never been to a PTA meeting, never been to a public school. It seemed like one prerequisite for every cabinet member is to be philosophically opposed to the agency they represent.
That's
It's
right.
a kind of counter-cultural revolution inside the Departments of Government.
Right. The New York Times headline on a story about Scott Pruitt, the head of the EPA. It says, EPA head stacks agency with climate change skeptics. He himself is, I think, a climate change denier, essentially. So
Right.
the planet is just in serious trouble. We're just
Yeah, you're sitting on a planet with global warming, and you have the head of the environmental, that's over energy and environmental protection, saying, well, it's not happening. We can see the climate is changing. The weather is shifting all across the country.
But is not the climate in the streets changing too, Trevor? I see people, it's a strange thing I saw the day after Trump's inauguration. Women who had his inauguration marching the next day for women's rights.
That's right.
That they had been had. Those who fought for affordable health care before against Obamacare, which is strange because Obamacare is affordable health care. And there's no such thing as Obamacare. That was a manipulative use of his name to turn folk against it. So to be for affordable health care against Obamacare is like being for an omelet without eggs. It does not make sense.
You can't do it. And that's the real problem, is that many people have been misled for so long that Obamacare is the worst thing that's ever happened, and they don't realize that it's not Obamacare, it's Medicaid. It's not Obamacare, it's the Affordable Care Act. It's not Obamacare, it's the reason you get to go to a doctor. It's the reason that you don't go bankrupt when you get sick in this country anymore.
And women, for example, Latessa, mammograms and Pap tests and a whole range of women issues, and poor people, rural areas cannot get to where the service centers are. And these centers are closed. They were closing because in the state of Illinois, the governor's budget has been frozen.
Yes,
But now
it
you
is.
compound that with killing Medicaid, at least in the House. These are very tough times.
And when you mention the issue for women, I mean, now rape and being a victim of domestic violence is a pre-existing condition. An individual who may have had a C-section, that disqualifies them now. That's a pre-existing condition. So this is an assault, as we have also seen with the state budget. This is an assault against women, an assault against vulnerable individuals.
When Trump signed the executive order against Planned Parenthood, what does that mean to women? It's been reduced to abortion, and yet
But
that
preventative care is the biggest driver of the services that Planned Parenthood provides. So early breast and cervical cancer screenings, life-saving screenings. The earlier you detect it, the better your treatment and the better the prognosis and the outcomes. But we're cutting those things off, as our state budget has done the same thing.
Jeanette, there must be some alternative action. It's not enough just to analyze what Trump has done, like what we're going to do about it. The Rainbow Push is challenging people watching the program tonight. In every state, there are now 7 states virtually that have decided to make age 18 automatic voter registration. You're in the federal register automatic at age 18, birth date, death date, age 18. To be freed of the price of voter registration, to be freed of billions of dollars, number one. In Illinois, it means 2 million new voters. And in terms of, if we fight for automatic voter registration and multiple days to register, and the fundamental right to vote as a fundamental constitutional right, it changes the ball game completely.
That's right. What's really exciting is that on May 4th, Illinois Senate actually passed automatic voter registration. Now it goes to the House for their support. But what we know is that when we give people more opportunities to vote, that more people are able to participate in our democracy. Look at Oregon, which was the first state to come out with automatic voter registration. New numbers just came out that 20% more young people voted, 24% more people of color voted in this most recent election because of automatic voter registration.
The Senate is passed as of May 4th. Let us, where's the House now on this bill?
So it has headed to the House, it's Senate Bill 1933. So we actually passed a similar measure a year ago.
Then Madigan said he supports it again.
Yes, we had bipartisan support, but it was vetoed, and we weren't able to override the veto.
The
So now we're trying
burden,
again.
the burden is in Governor Runner's
He's got to sign it.
hand.
He's got to be willing
That would
to
make
sign it.
Illinois number 7, right?
It would make us, I think, 8.
Number 8.
Yeah.
Eight, okay.
When you count just the district, yeah.
Also, 50 million if we get 50 million more voters would be added with automatic voter
And I
registration
think
across the
the
country.
easy way to get the governor to sign it, he's running for re-election probably in 2018, so there's enough pressure.
But I think that's exactly why he won't sign it, because it revitalizes individuals who may vote against him. I believe that's why he vetoed it
Well,
initially.
so members of the House are going to be running also, so we need to deal with them.
Be
and
right
we're
back
gonna
to
go for
talk
it.
more about what it means 100 days, that what Trump is doing, what we must do, what we must do in light of what Trump is doing. Be right back in just a moment.
Register today for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's 46th Annual International Convention, Wednesday, July 12th through July 15th, 2017, at the Hilton and Towers in Chicago, Illinois. The theme this year is Heal and Rebuild. For further information, go to www.rainbowpush.org or call 773-373-3366. July 12th through July 15th, 2017, Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome back. Don, the head of state being against us is not the first time we've seen this picture. Right. I remember being in London one time, and they had this museum, and they showed Jesse Owens running. Mm-hmm. And I had asked Jesse Owens some years ago how despicable it was when he won the Olympics in 1936. Hitler wouldn't shake his hand. Mm-hmm. He said, well, I got back home and Roosevelt wouldn't shake my hand either. Right. So we've kind of been here. So the question becomes, in light of Trump's attempt to take us, but what do we do? Because deep water does not drown. You drown because you stop kicking. Right. Are we going to keep kicking?
We're going to keep kicking. We started kicking January 21st. We have to support groups like that. We have to do some of the things that call our congresspeople, call our senators, continue to apply pressure, support young people. Like we should have been more supportive of the Occupy movement several years ago. Support these kids who are out there trying. maybe they are a little too wild in some of their presentation and their analysis, but we can help provide some of that. Street heat, as you've said many times, still matters.
You know, Trevor, the whole idea around Mother's Day, you know, which comes perhaps even tomorrow, is about women fighting for peace and justice. Ms. Howe took the position, why should you raise her son, be mannerable, respectful, just to kill somebody else's son? She was sent to do so or be killed by someone else's son. Women standing for justice, not just piety, women fighting for justice, whether it was the Mother's Day March which came out of the Civil War, a women march for the right to vote in the 1920s, women fight for the right of equal opportunity. It's going to take, and in this case, 54% of white women voted for Trump. The reason why.
I think there are a lot of reasons why. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that there were, for so many years, every single problem was blamed on President Obama. And so when someone came out and was able to continue to reinforce that, a lot of people bought into that reality. But what we're seeing now in this resistance after 100 days is that it's really led by women. You go out to any march, it doesn't have to be the Women's March. The Climate March looks like the Women's March. The Tax Day March looks like the Women's March. Women are leading this movement in a way that we haven't seen before. It's white women, it's women of color, it's young people. Sometimes you'll see people out there that are about 3 months old and they're holding up a little sign. They're ready to fight. So.
That's how back in the day everything looked like the Civil Rights Movement.
That's
Every
right.
other movement did, so we're doing it.
But that's what I found, a few days, not long ago, I found in the state house in Illinois, men putting women down in demeaning ways. Describe what happened.
Oh, well, we had one of the leaders on the other side of my aisle actually speak to a female legislator who was trying to make sure that women have greater access to equal pay. Berated her, basically, insulted her intelligence.
But what did he do?
Oh, he asked her, had she written the bill? As she answered questions, he would cut her off and say, you're just not answering my question. It to the point where at one point she actually apologized. And I broke all decorum at that moment and I shouted over to her, don't you ever say you're sorry. We should never apologize for standing for what's right. But that's the type of situations that we see in the chambers that create the policies that so many people are either accepting or resisting.
But Jeanette, this kind of behavior is becoming a new norm. In Boston, Massachusetts, the ball player Adam Jones was in the field and the names of invectives have been hurled at him. And it happens often, but he took it public. And then, but I think that's the bad news. The good news is the next day, a young Kenyan woman was singing the Star Spangled Banner. And when she was hit with a derogatory statement, that person who did it was expelled from the Fenway Park for life. So there's a sense of fight back too.
I think women are beginning to realize, as they did with the suffrage movement, that you can't just sit by and look at the television and complain. We can run for office and win. And so when we look at these state legislatures, and remember when you ran for president, both times women started to run for the United States Senate. We had no women in the Senate until you ran for president in '84, and really in '88, a whole bevy of women moved to the Senate.
We got Geraldine Ferraro really on the ticket. And the case we made was if Golda Meir could guide Israel during the time of war,
a woman could be in the
if
Senate.
Mrs. Thatcher could guide Britain, if Ms. Gardner could guide India, the world's largest democracy, why can't a woman be on the ticket? And so they put Geraldine Ferraro in something reacting the challenge that we'd put down.
So now you have women. So when women run for U.S. Senate across the country, you have the young lady in California that now is being suggested that she could even run for president. You're going to see more women going into that Senate. That 100 white male situation, well, it's not 100 white males now, it's 99. It will change the rules and how they behave. Same thing in these state legislatures. We can just vote them out. We're the majority of the voting age population in America.
Women and more progressives to be in that Senate, though, too. I'm so tired of these milquetoast people that we run in the show. It's
sad.
Because
that's why we're in this
I looked at a few days ago when the House passed the Medicaid bill, the anti-Medicaid bill, to see some white women voting for one who is against Planned Parenthood, who's against women's right of choice, of Medicaid for the poor.
The vote was very partisan, and poor women, particularly poor women of color, were vilified throughout the entire debate. Your name was evoked in the debate, stating how you had been pro-life at one point, and what was the shift. And the legislator said he ran into you in the Capitol and asked you a question, and I was thinking, why do you believe that the Reverend is here? There's a women's march happening. That's why he's here. He's here to stand with this agenda of resisting against all that's being pushed down our throat nationally and statewide.
When we mature, we should go forward, not backwards.
Exactly.
You do better when you learn better, when you know better.
Well, I mean, it was a
woman's right to
very...
self-determination is so fundamental and so basic.
Yes.
No matter what our understanding was as we grew up, as we became mature, we see things differently. Life is exposed us in very different terms, Trevor.
I think that's right, and I think it's important to actually learn from past mistakes. I hope that, wherever you are in the political spectrum, I think that the parties need to learn from their past mistakes, but I think the voters need to demand a little bit more. This is the first president who did not release his taxes. And this is the one president who we really needed to see his taxes, because he has so many properties that he spends every single weekend on. The man has more vacation time than I do. And we need to know the conflicts of interest. And so I hope that we're learning from mistakes that were made, and we really demand real ethical reforms.
We seem to have adjusted to his being on the FBI investigation as if that's a norm.
Yes,
We've given him a pass for some reason. He has more vacation time than me too, so just so
Than work time.
we'll talk about that later. But we've adjusted to it. The press has kind of had this weird. They were very easy on him during the campaign, then they got angry with him, and now they're kind of back. They can't figure out how to deal with this guy, and it's concerning.
I'm concerned, Jeanette, you hear that about these environmental rights. Even if you get the coal mining jobs back without environmental regulations, a coal miner dies every 6 hours from black lung disease today.
Yes.
So you have the job, but then you die early from cancer. And then you die from cancer because you can't get medical treatment because you're poor.
Well, you're emitting all of these hydrocarbons in the air. Every time a plane flies, you're cutting into the ozone layer, which causes this global warming, which is shifting the type of climate we receive. And for a president to appoint someone that acts like we don't live on planet Earth and we have nothing to do with the air we breathe, everything that happens in America is shifted across the world. It's not just us. And so we have to be concerned about the environment, the coal miners. We have to change how we use energy, how we create energy. We can't just keep digging in the ground because we're getting quote.
Latessa, interesting. You're in the state rep in the Illinois Illinois legislature, the PhD. What got you connected to politics?
I've just been a little girl on the south side of Chicago, seeing my grandmother be so excited about Harold Washington. And then as I got a little older, meeting President Clinton when I was 15 at my high school, and just always being engaged, having grandparents who talked about the fight and the fact that we have to always exercise our right.
You think our not voting pattern in some instances and the Trump factor will inspire your generation to begin to fight back? You think they will or not?
Well, I hope so. I think, unfortunately, the way people are resisting in our community is to not go to the polls. And I think we need to shift that. We need to get people to the polls in droves. People feel disconnected. This generation grew up with now a couple of presidents who entered the White House under questionable circumstances, and they don't believe that their vote counts. So we have to change that.
But I'm convinced that there are full narratives on why Hillary Clinton lost. And one of them we don't use. One of them is that she lost Electoral College, which was a college we couldn't attend based upon slave numbers. Right. The second was the Russian hacking factor, which created a cloud of suspicion. Then Comey's role as the FBI director, which was a dagger in Hillary's heart. But even the bigger one than that was black voter suppression. In North Carolina, after 2013, they removed 868 precincts. In North Carolina, they moved 168 precincts. I spoke at the college with 7,000 voters. As opposed to students voting at the student center, they had to go 3 miles down the road to vote. Most of them did not vote. That's called really voter hacking and voter suppression. The same thing happened in Philadelphia and in Milwaukee and Michigan. And in New York and Pennsylvania and Michigan and California, you can only vote one day. They don't even have early voting.
That's right. We saw voter suppression efforts across the country in the years leading up to this election. And I think that's one thing that we don't talk about enough, because the reality is there's no excuse for these laws to be passed. I think Wisconsin had one where, you have to send in your mail-in ballot earlier. And twice as many ballots were marked as invalid because of that. Other states have said, well, we can only vote on one day. Well, we know that's not true because of so many states, including Illinois, that have more options.
But Don, the right wing calls that voter fraud. Why don't Democrats fight back against the idea that there's no evidence of voter fraud, but much of voter fraud? Why is there a silence among Democrats who would stand to gain if our vote were not suppressed?
Well, I was going to actually ask you that as you brought it up, because I know working for you, we've been talking about that for a long time. We've been screaming into the wind about the voter suppression, and we haven't gotten much traction.
Many whites would accept the black vote, but will not fight for it. I mean, Gore won by 27,000 votes, but they stopped the count, and Bush was hit by 568. He didn't fight for that vote that you put. He didn't take his gloves off. In the case of Hillary, won by 3 million votes. What does that mean? Well, Kennedy beat Nixon by 110,000 votes, 3 million. Nixon beat Humphrey by 500,000, 3 million. Carter beat Ford by 1,700,000, 3 million. Bush lost to Gore, but won. I mean, she won by more votes than 5 or 6 presidents won back to back to back to back to back. Yeah, there's a kind of adjusting to that.
Right. And you just have to suppress the vote in the right places, not all over the place, but the right places, like Milwaukee, for example. Somewhere in North Carolina, you suppress it where there's a lot of black folks. And then you can let that 3 million votes, I'm sure she got a lot of them from California. And so they're very strategic in what they're doing.
But I think there was no one in the race that fought to protect the vote and that even raised the issue. And so I think that's why your campaigns were so significant, because you ran and pulled people along with you. We have to vote for these reasons. Your vote matters for these reasons. I have not seen a candidate yet.
Clearly, me that when blacks win, women win.
Yes.
Because we're basic for women's rights. They are mothers, for the most part, who work. And when women win, workers win.
Right. But you
Workers
put the
win,
issues out
Latinos
there.
win. You put that together, it's called a coalition, and that's the power you need to win with.
But Reverend, you could articulate the relationship between my vote and my life. Everybody else, they just run.
This is very
They're
true.
just running in the air.
Let me just say this one thing. The other thing that you did, and the Rainbow did, was you stitched together all these constituencies.
Yes.
You went to those coal mines. We're just saying to the coal miners now, well,
Oh, well,
those jobs are never coming back, forget you. No, we have to offer them some alternative. We have to connect them with us and with women. We're not doing that.
You
And
went
we
to
have to drill
Appalachia.
down. Yes, and we have to drill down to the state legislatures, which is ultimately where all of these decisions to suppress the vote happen. We're quite progressive in the state that we're in right now, but all of our neighboring states also took some, they're not. Wisconsin, Ohio, they took measures that did suppress the vote. So we have to deal with the state
We're
legislatures.
talking about Trump 100 days later, what happened and what can we do to change our condition. Big elections in Virginia and New Jersey this year, and then there's next year. The Rainbow Push Convention is July 12th through 15th in Chicago. Go to your website and connect right now, 773-256-2775. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Judge Mathis and on will be at the convention. Maximum Waters. Be right back in just a moment. Coming up next will be Reverend Joseph Bryant, Mount Calvary Baptist Church in San Francisco. Be right back in just a moment.
Register today for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's 46th Annual International Convention, Wednesday, July 12th through July 15th, 2017, at the Hilton and Towers in Chicago, Illinois. The theme this year is Heal and Rebuild. For further information, go to www.rainbowpush.org or call 773-373-3366. July 12th and July 15th, 2017, Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome back. Jeanette, the narrative is the reasons why Hillary Clinton lost, she won. And one person, one vote democracy, 3 million plurality is a victory. That's the first thing. Secondly, no one analyzes the impact of black voter suppression. The same people who denied us the right to vote sought to diminish that vote ever since we had that 1965. It's not just blacks that hurt when that takes place. In 1965, blacks could not vote. White women couldn't serve on juries in the South. You couldn't vote at age 18. You couldn't vote on campus. You couldn't vote bilingually. So when the Black Foundation shakes, the whole progressive wing kind of collapses. In light of what's happening, what can the church, as a church woman and Sunday school teacher and minister, what can the church do now?
I think we have to do civics education. We tend to let politicians come in our churches and give speeches, but we do not teach our people the power of the vote, and we can register people during the week and on Sunday, have it registration available for them.
You want education, you want political education taught in church?
Yeah, because everything we do is political.
Oh.
You build that building, you got to get a zoning permit, you have to get a waiver so that you don't have to pay for water bills. It's all political. And every time you bury somebody, it's political. It's the death certificate, birth certificate when you christen a baby. So we need to understand politics.
Moving the tomb is all about politics.
It's all about politics.
Reverend, what can the church, in light of the Trump ascendancy and this radical attack upon our rights, what can the church do?
Well, there's a Bible verse, Reverend, that you know it very well. Be not weary in well-doing. I think some of what has happened is that the church instantly after the election and then after the inauguration lost some of its luster and fire in terms of the cause of being active and being progressive about having a hands-on approach to do very things that Reverend Wilson alluded to, that we have to be engaged in the fight for social justice. I mean, Jesus was a radical teacher, and that's why he was crucified. It wasn't just because of his spiritual views, it was because of his political views and how he stood up against the establishment. And so the church still has a role.
The establishment religious order and the Rome occupiers both tried him in one night and killed him.
That's exactly right.
So the church between the gap between church and politics is fake gospel.
It's a fake gospel, Reverend, because we live in a society where we got to make sure our voices are heard, and what greater place for us to build community and strength and make sure that the people that we really want to see make a difference aren't disenfranchised and let aside. The church is still the cornerstone for all that to happen.
As an activist church, what kind of things are your church doing? Is your church doing?
We consistently, Reverend, talk about voter registration. We consistently educate our high school children about the causes and about the various issues that are coming up in elections. We want them to know as they get older that these are the things that will matter to you. And so when your mother or father or grandparent comes home and talks about the issues that they're having, paying their bills or paying for medicines or access to education, that your vote and your voice matters. And so we consistently start with our young people, and then we do voter registration. We have our folks, young adults who are so active and energetic. They do polling stations and cold calls, and they walk the streets during election time. And we pass that information constantly. They have to move.
Latessa, it strikes me that as we approach Mother's Day, that it almost always boils down into piety and love mother and the red rose if she's alive and the white carnation if she's dead. But women of substance have had to fight. And they said, we're going to kill all the firstborn babies. Moses' mother said, not my baby. She got creative. We're going to kill the firstborn. Mary, Jesus' mama said, no, I'm not. So women must fight to bring about the change we see.
Yes, and what you'll see overwhelmingly in the Illinois legislature is that it is women who are the backbone of the very funding that we were just talking about. We overwhelmingly carry the bills to make sure education is funded, to make sure Medicaid is funded properly. I Vice Chair Human Services. I mean, it is women and the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. When you look at what's happening in terms of creating policy for the most vulnerable in the state of Illinois, we're the backbone of all of that. We carry the heavy water.
At the convention, we're going to have Elizabeth Warren and Maxine Waters, and honoring Aretha Franklin.
Fighters.
You know, I remember when Dr. King was trying to make payroll, it was so difficult. Everybody loves him now, but because of his anti-war position, he was being attacked by other civil rights leaders, closed church doors in his face. Aretha Franklin, Harry Belafonte did an 11-city tour for free, But on 9 of those cities, we didn't make a dime because of his anti-war position. And we stepped on the stage in Houston, Texas. And Dr. King walked on the stage to give a wreath of flowers. They put gas in the fans. We had to evacuate the building. But standing up was Aretha's in that tradition. We were honoring Aretha at the convention, Aretha Franklin, and along with Maxine Waters, whose voice just stands out, and Elizabeth Warren. These are women who are fighting to change the condition in which we live.
Also, remember at the convention this year, for a second time, we're doing a training for clergy. How do prophets speak truth to power? So we're doing the Jesse Jackson Social Justice Institute to begin to help ministers. How do you hold a press conference in your city where you are when the mayor or the county commissioner is moving against the best interests of your
Reverend
people?
Barbara speaking at that luncheon.
Reverend Barbara is the
From
keynote
North Carolina.
speaker.
Reverend Freddie Haynes will be here. Reverend Jenkins, Reverend Smokey
Reverend Otis Moss will be here. I mean, people will begin to hear and see
Reverend Jenkins,
the real
Marvin
politics of
Reverend
Jesus.
Marvin Winans.
Right. It's going to be a powerful clergy luncheon, and when people leave, they'll be able to say, this is what I'll do when I go back to my state, North Carolina, South Carolina, California.
I think when you lose in this way, some people get so hard on themselves they become cynical. If you work real hard and someone steals your wallet, you did nothing wrong. You got robbed.
Right.
Don't fight yourself. Fight the robber. And so we did the right thing. We did the right coalition. It was multi-ethnic, multi-racial. It was black, white, brown, young, old. We won by 3 million votes. So we didn't do something wrong. We were robbed.
That's right.
That's right. The worst thing that you can do right now is stop. The worst thing you can do right now is slow down at all. We have
Or turn on yourself.
What?
Or turn on yourself.
That's right. Or turn on each other, or turn on yourself. Like there's just what we need to do is united come forward and say, this is what we believe in. This is what we stand for. We're going to prevent healthcare being taken away from people. We are going to expand the right to vote. We're going to get money out of politics. We need to be very clear about all of those. And we've seen the grassroots will follow. They're supportive of this. They're leading the way right now.
Well, one of the mentions that you're leading at the convention, Reverend Brian, is the sports and technology. Explain what sports and tech, why sports and tech?
Well, both of those mediums, Reverend, are so creative and so engaging, and people enjoy them. They're a part of our natural fabric of our country and really of the world. And because of the consistent evolution of technology in so many different ways, sports has grabbed technology and has made it a real part of the interaction with not only the teams, but with fan base and with all of the various things that people do, look up their sports on their app. As a matter of fact, the reason why the television ratings are going down in football is because people aren't watching the televisions, they're watching their phones. And then you have e-gaming, and you have esports, and you have virtual reality, and you have trainings that's coming out where people can, not get hit every time they go to practice. They can actually see simulated plays, through their virtual reality glasses. There's so many things that are happening through some of the large companies in Silicon Valley. It just makes sense for those two synergies to happen and for us to maximize
I want you to conduct a workshop in Silicon Valley where young people, young athletes really, and ex-athletes, have learned to master this technology. It says life beyond the playing field is out through us. Because as bright as the lights are, they're just on for 3 or 4 years. Then you're old at 28.
That's right.
So if you don't master some science of them running and hopping and skipping and jumping, you can't survive.
Some of the best individuals that I've met so far in the technology and sports space are former athletes because they have the expertise to come into a situation and give firsthand knowledge on how things should be developed. And they're being hired by the tech companies to be brand ambassadors and content advisors because they know from firsthand experience how to make the games or the trainings to be real.
Isaiah Thomas of the Detroit Pistons is there every year. Give me clips of confusion about these two Isaiah Thomases.
There's one that was a part of the Bad Boys. He was the point guard that led the Detroit Pistons to those back-to-back championships. He was an amazing player, but he has retired, and he has now moved into the executive office. Very well-dressed, very dap and debonair brother. And then we have a young man who is, we're continuing to pray for him as he's been challenged over these past couple of weeks because of the death of his sister. But he's such a hungry young man to play basketball. They have the same name, but they don't share a bloodline.
So Isaiah Thomas, the basketball player, is not Isaiah Thomas' son.
That's correct.
I said because there's so much confusion about that.
One spells it biblically and the other not.
That's right.
Yeah, but the
Different
fact is, his father was an Isaiah Thomas fan, and he named his son after Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
So now people are confused about Isaiah Thomas, the Detroit Piston ball player from the University of Indiana, and this Isaiah. They're not the same guy. but both the winners.
And shout out, because my son's name is Isaiah, too.
Reverend, you were speaking earlier about the importance of clergy, and I just wanted to mention this because you are a model of this in a very real way. Because you, along with obviously your mentor, Reverend King and Ralph Abernathy, and all those pastors during the civil rights movement, you made the difference. You helped us to know the causes that we needed to fight and the ways we needed to fight them. It was through the voice of the
theologically,
pastor.
now it's a confusion about how do you worship. It said do justice, act, and love enjoy watching it work, and then walk humbly. You didn't do it because you're arrogant. If you see a turtle on top of a pole, one thing you know, he didn't get that by himself.
That's right.
So whatever you do, be humble about it.
So I just think, as Bishop Bryant has said, Reverend, what you do automatically is what has to be replicated. Because when the clergy stand up, and it's not about it, you talk about private piety, you know, how good God is and how we're going to get a pie in the sky. We didn't get freedom that way. Our activist preachers, like Sojourner Truth, like Nat Turner, they were fighting and struggling against, they were resisting oppression.
You read that chapter, it starts off by saying honor your mother and father and all that.
Right.
Because these virtues matter.
They do matter.
Pious behavior as opposed to rowdy behavior does matter.
You have to have moral base.
But Gibson said, but look here, do know that it's not flesh and blood.
We wrestle not.
We wrestle with powers and principles. So unless you're willing to fight, if you bring a child to the world, you must also fight at PTA meeting.
Absolutely.
Don't just send the child to school. If you're going to fight to bring a
for
child to the world, fight for health care, fight for a living wage. I mean, those are religious fights.
Absolutely.
You're fighting for justice.
Train up a child the way they should go cannot just be on Sunday morning. Train up a child means that that's an inclusive reality, that everything that matters to that child's upbringing, their education, their experiences, their opportunities, all the accesses that they would want to enjoy in life is a part of our biblical responsibility.
So if you live 50, 60 years and on your obituary it doesn't say activism, that's a disgrace.
That's right. That's right. Part of the responsibility is to
means that you adjust it.
You have to ensure that your hands are in the mix so that you can make a real difference, and not just on Sunday mornings.
And what you just mentioned is why the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus a few years ago began to bring 8th graders, those who don't have the opportunity, their schools don't take them. We bring them to Springfield and we try to give them that introduction to civics, help them understand what is going on, who are these people making these decisions about your life. And the children are extremely receptive to it. They participate by sharing with legislators the issues that they find important. And we talk to our colleagues about making sure that you engage the students when they come. We'll be having that shortly, and we'll have hundreds of students.
You're in trouble with the 2 millennials tonight.
I don't know, but Trevor is.
And so are you, shucks. And a Delta on top of that.
Yes.
Oh, Jeanette.
They're next. That's right. We like each other.
Bond, Trevor said something earlier that I really appreciated because it gave me an image of Joshua marching around the walls. And you talked about the marching that happened, the day after the inauguration and the impact of that. And so that's a part of, Reverend, the struggle and the continuum of how to make an impact. So I was really moved by that.
It just wasn't one lap.
No.
I went to one march.
You keep marching until the walls come down.
Let me say, those of you who are watching the program, that in your state, whoever you are, fight for automatic voter registration at age 18. It does not make sense to have to be registered and register again. That is in fact a kind of poll tax. Every state, California is coming on board very soon, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
Fight for multiple days to vote, not just on a Tuesday. Fight for building a coalition. You cannot fight these big issues by yourself. And fight for the constitutional right to vote, because voting right now is a state's right, and it should be a constitutional right. Trevor, common cause, your agenda right through here?
Yeah, that's right. Automatic voter registration is the key to fixing the many issues that we have. I like that you were talking about the young people that you brought out. So we have a civic engagement program, and the first question that we always get when our program is over is, how do I run for office? We need to get more people involved, whether it's running for office or voting, and automatic voter registration is the way to do it.
Be right back in a moment talking for some closing thoughts about tonight's agenda and the session. Trouble 100 days later, what are you going to do the next 100 days? That's the big one. What will you do Next 100 days. Be right back with closing thoughts.
Exciting news! The free Rainbow Push mobile app is ready for download. Get all the news and schedules for the upcoming convention and more. Go to the Rainbow Push homepage at www.rainbowpush.org to download app today. Noticias importantes. La aplicación móvil y gratis de Rainbow Push está lista para utilizar. Obtengan todas las noticias y horarios para la próxima convención y mucho más. Visiten la página de inicio de Rainbow Push en www.rainbowpush.org para descargar la aplicación hoy.
Welcome back. Some closing thoughts now from my distinguished panel tonight. Attorney Jeanette Wilson. What next?
I want everybody that's watching, send a delegation of at least 2 to 4 people from your congregation to the Push Convention this year. They can get an education policy on Wednesday, then on Thursday the clergy will have a whole session, and then on Friday a women's session, and healthcare and sports on Thursday. You want to be at this year's convention. We're going to tell you how to act, how to move forward, and how to change the conditions under which we live.
Representative Wallace.
Yes, well, I want everyone to make sure that they're paying attention to what's happening in their state legislature. I serve as the secretary of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. We are chaired by Senator Lightford. Our House caucus is chaired by Representative Lilly. Go to our website, see how we're fighting for you. It's ilbcf.org. That's ilbcf.org. You can find out all of the legislation that we talked about here today and more, how we're pushing for police accountability, education, school funding reform, all of the things that matter to our community.
Go girl.
Thank you for having me.
Trevor.
Forget about the state of the state. Go to stateoftheswamp.com. Stateoftheswamp.com. It's a brand new report by Common Cause. Looks at the ethics or lack thereof. We are seeing the most corrupt 100 days of any president in history. Learn more about it at stateoftheswamp.com.
Swamp Doctor.
Faith community, we cannot do our job within the 4 walls of the church. Reverend Jackson has shown us over the years that doing justice outside makes a difference. And one of the ways you do that is through technology. If you're not open to technology, you're not going to be relevant in this generation. So Faith Tech will be a part of our convention. Make sure you're there.
Chicago, Illinois, at the Hilton Hotel, July 12th through 15th. Do it all, let nothing break your spirit. Don't break your spirit, and don't you surrender. We fall down, we get back up again, because the ground is no place for a champion. Be right back next week. Keep hope alive. God bless you.
Register today for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's 46th Annual International Convention, Wednesday, July 12th through July 15th, 2017, at the Hilton and Towers in Chicago, Illinois. The theme this year is Heal and Rebuild. For further information, go to www.rainbowpush.org or call 773-373-3366. July 12th through July 15th, 2017, Chicago, Illinois.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of 2 words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Global humanitarian.
Evolutionary, revolutionary.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution. Push Excel.
Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Love for disciplines.
Equality and perseverance.
People united.
Push yes.
I'm
I'm Otis Moss III.
I'm Frederick Douglass Haynes III.
And we are here simply just to say to you about an incredible organization known as Operation Push.
Can I be admitted?
No, sir, you cannot be admitted.
Why?
I am not going to serve you.
Because of my race?
Operation Push has been here for us even when we didn't know it. As a matter of fact, a lot of the doors that you walk through is because of the fact that somebody knocked those doors down.
I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
And because of Operation Push, when it started as Operation Breadbasket, after the assassination of Dr. King, they decided to build an organization that were people united to save humanity.
Just what is Operation Push?
Well, Operation Push is a civil economics organization. It's a religious organization with an economic mission. And we believe that the black church is the political and spiritual salvation of our people. And it is to that extent that we challenge churches and churchmen to get involved.
And so we are simply asking those who have been blessed by Push to join the movement.
That's right. And if you do that, I promise you, you are blessing the next generation. And that's what we need, generationally, to bless those who come behind us, just as those before us made sure that we could have what we have. That's Operation Push, pushing doors open. But we can't push if we don't have your hand involved.
We want to turn on the gas. We want to turn on the water. We want to sell the clothes. We want to sell the cars. We want to be men. We want self-determination.
And it was Jesse Jackson who was the young man of the movement and now is an elder statesman. And we've got to make sure that we have another generation that will be pushing forward, another generation that will be building an Operation Breadbasket, another generation that will be talking about new economic strategies for those who are poor.
And ensuring that we are never politically disenfranchised. I hope you already recognize that there is a movement afoot to rob us of what we fought so hard for and shed blood for, and that is the right to express our voice through voting.
If blacks vote in great numbers, progressive whites win. It's the only way progressive whites win. If blacks vote in great numbers, Hispanics win. When blacks, Hispanics, and progressive whites vote, women win. When women win, children win. When women and children win, workers win. We must all come up together. We must come up together.
We need you in Rainbow Push to make sure we are politically empowered and enfranchised.
There is no other organization like Rainbow Push, and we encourage you to make sure that you join and financially support. If we don't support it, no other organization will. It is our duty, it is our job to support our organizations.
We got to do it. Grassroots organization, hitting the streets and challenging those in the suites. That's Operation Push.
I like that. I'm Reverend Otis Moss III.
Hey, I'm Frederick D. Haynes III. He's rubbing off on me.
Make sure you join Operation Push, Rainbow Push, today.
Keep hope alive.